First day frickckups. What's your worst? My first day working as a receptionist at a vet clinic. I was still pretty unfamiliar with the software used for documenting what was to be done during a clinic visit. I didn't know what to put in for a puppy's first rabies shot and no one was around to ask, so I just guessed and checked off something called rabies lab. A few minutes later the vet, seeing the puppy, pulled me out back and asked if I'd made a mistake. Turns out I'd called for a rabies lab test, not a vaccine. Turns out a rabies test involves cutting a dog's head off and having it shipped off to have its brain tested for rabies. So, I basically called for a puppy to be beheaded on my first day. This has got to be one of the best first day stories here. Good job. Spilled chloroform on my hand while doing an RNA extraction at a biolab. Stumbled over to the lab manager. Told him that if I blacked out it was because I spilled chloroform on my hand. Then blacked out. My first day working at an auto sales lot. My boss was a huge black guy named Al. He smirked at me and said we had to wash every car on the lot. They were big 80s Lincolns. At least we had a wash bay with a pressure washer nozzle. I pulled the first one out from its row, threw it in reverse and promptly backed up right into the owner's demonstration model. He ran out and yelled at me. My boss yelled, "We're just playing bumper cars." The owner was not amused, but there was no visible damage. A few cars later I pulled one out onto the street and rammed the tire into a sewer drain in the sidewalk that had a pointed edge. It dug into the tire and I watched as it started hissing and going flat. My boss told the owner someone walking by had stabbed it with a knife. Things went better from there. We got almost all the cars done when the washer nozzle came apart. Apparently it happened all the time, and I was sent to parts to get the needed fix. The guy there saw I was new and nervous and told me to tell Al to stop rigging the thing and fix it right. Like the moronic robot I was, I went up to this large black man and repeated exactly what I was told to say. His face went blank and got a pained look, and I realized what I had just said. The guys in the service bay roared with laughter. I didn't get fired, but I did get that service manager back. He asked me months later to wash his car for a wedding he was going to. I washed every inch, except a portion on the side where I had taped in letters that spelled out "Jackass has arrived." It looked great when I sprayed it down and it was wet, but when it dried I had hoped you could clearly see the words. You could. He came back furious. I quit shortly after that. Sounds like Huge Black Al is a pretty awesome human being. Didn't show up at all for my first day working at a bar. Why? Cause I was out drinking all night to celebrate getting the job at the same dang bar. Pretty much no excuse there. As a teenager I worked at Dairy Queen. Awesome job. By the way, first day, they put me in drive-thru with 2 female and also teenaged co-workers so I can watch and learn how to make whatever they're making. I watch them make a few blizzards and figure it's easy. You just put ice cream and candy topping into the cup, stick it in the blending thing, flip the switch and mix it up. Which, yes, it is that easy, except one of the girls training me finally says, "Okay, you can make the next blizzard that gets ordered." Somebody orders one, and it's a nerd's blizzard. Yuck. In case you wondered, she advises that nerds have a tendency to punch through the side of the paper cup while blending, so you have to use 2 cups. What she doesn't mention was that when you do this, you have to keep a finger on the inside cup while you're blending to keep it from spinning around in the outside cup. I flip the switch, and the inside cup starts spinning furiously. The contents of the cup begin to fly out and both girls start screaming. By the time I flip the switch again, I have spackled vanilla soft serve and nerds all over every square inch of the drive-thru, not to mention both girls and myself. Looking back, the real reason this was a first day fuck up is that me, plus 2 teenage girls, plus the 3 of us being covered in vanilla soft serve, could have easily become the most amazing workplace physical encounter ever conceived, but I was too retarded to realize it. When I was about 22 I got my first proper job in an investment bank. I was introduced to the head of the department, a high flyer lady probably in her mid-30s, but of course seemed quite old to me, not long out of university. She said that she noticed from my CV that we'd been to the same school. I said, "Wow, what a coincidence. My mother went there as well. You might have known her." I didn't understand until a while afterwards why she suddenly went cold on me and ended the meeting. I had the same thing with my boss. Although I did not say it to his face, I always assumed he was my mom's age, and I kind of treated him as an elder, or well, a 45-year-old. Then, I found out he was 32. During my first week working at a library, I received a call from a guy who sounded authoritative. The library often gets calls from government agencies and such. He asked for my boss's home phone number. There was a small book of numbers next to the phone, so I gave him her number, assuming this was an urgent call about funding applications, or booksellers, etc. It turns out that I gave my boss's number to a guy that has been stalking her for years. She was not happy. Oh man. I work at a library too. There is some unbelievably fricked up crap that happens in libraries. When I try to tell my friends, they always call bulls on me. This isn't necessarily a frick up and it's not my first day story, but here goes. So I used to work in an intensive residential treatment center for kids with severe autism. The kids there are very low functioning and unpredictable, so needless to say, there are some pretty interesting first days for people, but one of my favorite stories was one a co-worker had told me. He said one day, this girl comes in for her first day. We were giving her the tour of the place and introducing the kids to her. Once we got to Client X's room and opened the door, sure enough, Client X was sitting naked in the middle of his bedroom floor masturbating furiously. I closed the door and told her that he does that sometimes. She didn't seem shocked at all, and I figured that was a good sign. But after a few minutes, she asked to go to the bathroom. A few minutes later, I saw her through the window riding away on her bike. She never came back. If she's scared off by something that small, it was most likely for the best, as I'm sure that job isn't easy. My first week of work at a Fortune 500 company, I deleted about half of the company's internal DNS records. You should have seen the look on my face when a bunch of department heads came flying to our area. Waiter at Italian restaurant. First tray full of red wine glasses for a table of cougars. Leaned over to place first wine glass down. Spilled 6-8 glasses on a lady wearing all white. I started at a Subway shop in Jersey when I was 16. I was immediately taught that each foot-long sandwich with cheese was to get 6 triangles of cheese. No more, no less. An hour later, a customer ordered one such sandwich, and I prepared it accordingly with the boss looking over my shoulder. When the customer left, he asked, how much cheese did you just put? I dunno. 6? 7, he screamed. You put 7 pieces. Well, I'm sorry, it won't happen. He cut me off. Sorry will not bring back the piece of cheese. I didn't go back to that sucker. Frick man, cheese is more expensive than printer ink. You could cost the company millions in a week. Probably not my most humiliating experience, but as far as first days go, it wasn't fun. When I was in high school, I wanted to take Spanish in addition to French, in part because I wanted to go with the Spanish club to Spain. However, only students who were in 3rd year and above would be able to go. I asked my guidance counselor if I could study on my own and then test into 3rd year. She said no, and as an added bonus, I should probably discontinue my college prep courses because it's not necessary for someone in my situation, as I would likely be working in a factory. Naturally that peed me off, and I went directly to the head of the Spanish department to ask her if I could study independently and test into 3rd year. She said it was unlikely that I would be able to do it, but if I did and I passed the exam, she would approve it. I studied my butt off for several months, and the time came to take the test. I took it and did really well. However, the head of the Spanish department didn't have a section of the class that would fit into my schedule, so I would be placed into another teacher's class. This teacher was peeved that I was joining her class because I had skipped 2.5 years of Spanish, and B, I would arrive to her class about 10 minutes late every day because I was taking AP French at another school. Subsequently, I was determined to work very hard to impress this teacher and get on her good side. The first assignment was to prepare a speech to be read in front of the class describing our first experience driving with our parents. I intended to start with the following. La primera vez conducía. Estaba muy nervioso porque mi madre gritó porque ella tenía miedo. The first time I drove, I was really nervous because my mom was screaming because she was afraid. Instead, I overconjugated and began my speech with this. La primera vez conducía. Estabamu I nervioso pork mi madre grito por la tenía mida. The first time I drove, I was really nervous because my mom was screaming because she took a crap. I scream when I take a crap too. Technically not a first day, but a few weeks back one of the stores I'm a casual at got a new manager. However, seeing as I only worked weekends I never actually met him. One weekend I got a phone call that the other person I work with on the Saturday had called in sick and that the new part-timer for during the week would fill in. Anyway, when I got to work I said hi to the new part-timer dude. I didn't know him either, and he didn't respond. A bit later in the day though, I went up and asked him what he thought of the manager, because I had heard that he was a bit of a dong. Turns out the part-timer had also called in sick, and I was talking to the manager. He laughed and said, "Who do you think I am?" To this day he hasn't let me forget about it, and now most of the managers at other stores laugh about it too. Glad they have a sense of humor and I still have a job. So he wasn't a dong. Not me, but my roommate's girlfriend had an awesome story about working at Fuddruckers. She had been working there a few weeks. First time she answered the phone, she picks it up and goes, "Hi, this is Rudfuckers. How can I help you?" Her boss just calmly told her to put the phone down, and I laughed for a good 5 minutes. That is exactly why I hate the name Fuddruckers. I got an embarrassing one. I moved from California to Northern Virginia as a junior in high school, so I knew no one in my new school. Anyway, first day of school I had to take the bus, and I am not sure why I thought school here in VA started later than back in California. So I woke up and was at the bus stop around 8 AM. I seen a lot of kids and they looked smaller than me. I just figured kids my age stopped taking the bus, so we drive around collecting more kids. Finally I see my HS, but we pass it. At this point I am like, dude, what the heck? Then 5 minuets later I arrive at the middle school. So I told the driver, she kinda smiled and gave me a personal very own ride on the bus to the front doors of my HS, and I missed homeroom and second period. Not really a frick up, more of a hazing. My first day as a grocery bagger when I was 16. A guy told me I had to shake up all the salad dressings or they would go stagnant. So I guess someone was supposed to tell me after 20 minutes or so. Except they forgot about me, and I stood there shaking every salad dressing until my shift was over 3 hours later. This is hilarious. My first day as an AC camera assistant on a film set, I picked up a Pelican case full of prime lenses without checking to see if it was latched closed. About 50k worth of lenses spilled out onto the sidewalk. Luckily for me none were damaged. Whoever leaves a Pelican case with 50k worth of fragile equipment unlatched should be spanked. First day at work in a pretty general IT job, bit of tech, programming, sysadmin stuff. And the night before I didn't get much sleep because I was pretty nervous about it all. The office that I was working in was fairly small, and the company was having an activity there with a few important people, including the managing director. Anyway, because stuff was going on they didn't have much time to show me the ropes and go through all the induction crap. So they left me to read some company documents in my office. At some stage I must have fallen asleep while reading this oh so exciting stuff, and I wake up to the sound of the door to my office closing. Apparently I was snoring a bit too loudly and the managing director had to come and close the door. Luckily he was pretty cool about it all, and was actually apologizing to me for not having anything for me to really do on my first day. Don't worry, I fall asleep at meetings where the company's president is sitting directly across from me. I feel your pain. Forgot that I was growing a protest beard. I was in the middle of a slump. Don't judge me. Didn't shave before my first day. Came in looking like a homeless dude in a shirt plus tie. It didn't help that one of my names is Muhammad. Of course they took my photo with that day and I take great care to face it the wrong way when I wear it. Not just first day on the job. First hour. Boss is giving me the overview when I start to feel a pretty strong need to take a dump. So I politely interrupt my boss and say, famous last words, "I'll be right back." So I go into the bathroom, do my business, wipe, and flush. Next thing I know, the toilet is not only stuffed, but overflowing all over the floor. OMG. WTF do? I can't just leave it there. So I come out of the bathroom and sheepishly fess up to my boss. He has to call some people over to help out. A few minutes later I see the CTO founder come over with a mop and bucket. Can you say mortified? I don't think I've ever been more embarrassed in my life. Oh yeah, and later on, after the cleanup I find out that that was the toilet with the weak flush, which everyone who worked there apparently knew about but me. It's funny now, but definitely wasn't back then. Definitely not as good as most of these, but while I was at college, I got a job as an intern at a company about an hour away from where I was living at the time. The plan was to commute, but luckily my parents only lived about 25 minutes from my new job, so I figured I'd stay with my parents the night before so I would have a shorter drive to work on my first day. For whatever reason I left my work clothes on hangers on the doorknob, and my mom's cat pee on them or sprayed or whatever male cats do. I was in such a rush to get ready the next morning that I didn't notice the smell until after I had gotten to work. Not first day, but I was working in a lab over the summer and managed to leave a container filling from the distilled water dispenser overnight. I came back the next day to find the entire floor flooded, and in an open plan lab. That's a lot, with the machine needing new, and dang expensive, filters. Took all day, but at least I cleaned it up. Not really my frickup, but I was involved. Got a new job as an industrial engineering intern at a plant. In this plant one of the functions of my department was to oversee safety. On my first day when we went around and shook everyone's hand and said hello, this lady, we will call her Sheila, was sick. Sheila is the middle manager under our department that deals with the boring day-to-day details and communicates with the floor workers. So in about a year's time I am this lady's boss. My boss decided that the best way for me to understand how the plant worked was for me to spend a week as a floor worker on each machine. So the next few days I came to work dressed as a floor worker doing floor work. While I'm machining away a few days later with the team leader on the floor when Shelia calls the weekly safety briefing, I tell the team leader that I'm going with him because it would be good for me to sit in on. So I go in and sit down, and Shelia is leading the meeting. At this point she still doesn't know me and has every reason to assume I am a new trainee floor worker. Shelia comes behind me and puts her hands on my shoulders and nicely tells me I should go do some work. It doesn't occur to me at this point she doesn't know who I am and I think she's just joking, so I say haha okay and just sit there. She goes and shuffles some papers around or something and gets ready to start. She looks up and I'm still sitting there chillin' talking to the team leader. She points me out and starts yelling, "You, what are you still doing here? I thought I told you to get back to work. You can't just come in here and slack off." At this point I interjected, "I think sitting in on this meeting will help me better understand and do my job. No, your job is to go out there and work on the machine. We will tell you if there is something else you need to know. There's a bit more," and I'm just sitting there like WTF and no one else is stopping her. So, not wanting to get into a yelling match on my third day, I just leave to go ask my boss WTF. I wasn't out of the room a minute when the PA comes on and I hear in her voice, "Super sweet, would the new engineer please return to the safety room please?" Apparently they asked her why she kicked out the new engineering intern and she flipped out. Ever since then she was super nice to me and we always had a funny story to tell. Still kind of irks me that is the way they treat the floor workers though. TLDR. I was a new engineer at a plant and a lady under me yelled at me and kicked me out of a meeting because she thought I was a floor worker. WTF. I was an engineer in a plant for 5 years and now I'm a manager, and if a floor worker operator wanted to sit in on a safety meeting I think I would jump for joy. That woman should be fired. Story from a friend. My buddy just got a job at an airport fire station at a decent sized city. During his first day in the phone room the special alert went off and the control tower started updating him on the situation. A special alert is what happens when an airplane is trying to land while on fire. A regular alert is when some fat tourist's heart finally goes out. So friend X is a little nervous and doesn't want to screw up. Everyone else is out on the runway waiting for this flaming plane to land. Friend X jumps the gun and calls City Z for backup. City Z never receives calls for backup from the airport, so they scramble 15 fire stations with 2 trucks per station. City Z is expecting a major bloodbath, so the ATC locks down the area. The road gets backed up with about 1/2 mile of fire trucks outside the gate. A jet comes roaring in an emergency landing after making a sharp 90-degree left bank. He said the jet looked like a fighter jet when it turned on its side and landed. He didn't know they could do that. It turns out that the generator in the rear of the plane had overheated and warned that it may be on fire. It was perfectly fine. Friend X had to explain the 30+ fire trucks outside that had loaded foam and other stuff and were now trying to figure out why they were called for nothing. He didn't get fired but never lived it down. Not a first day frickup, but one of my favorite I got screwed work stories. I interviewed for a job as store manager for a new comic book store for Mile High Comics. They weren't looking for a lot of experience. They were going to give a month's training in the warehouse, front and back office, and another store before they opened the new store. Well, they said out of all the candidates, me and another guy gave the best interviews, and we liked both of you. So, congratulations. We've decided to hire both of you to co-manage the new store. Awesome. So we spend the next month training in the warehouse. During the last week I'm there, me and a bunch of other workers are filling new comic book subscription orders. Basically, you go up and down a shelf with stacks of each comic book, grab what you need, and then fill the order. Speed and accuracy are essential. You want to grab the comics as quickly as possible, but you don't want to make any mistakes. Eventually you start to recognize comics simply by the cover art. Well, whenever you empty a stack, you have to pull out a new stack of comics from the shipping box and put them on the shelf. Problem was, one of the guys I was pulling comics with kept putting the stack upside down. You can't recognize the cover upside down, usually a lot of white space, and you can't read the title to confirm the selection. So I was wasting a bunch of time flipping the comic books back over. Eventually when the guy comes past me I say, "Hey, if you put them in right side up, this will go faster. See?" and I show him. He seems to get it. Well, not 5 minutes later, he goes in and puts another stack upside down. And while I don't yell or anything, I do call him out in front of everyone. "Hey, I just showed you. You should put them in right side up. You just put them in upside down again." Well, the guy gets all annoyed that I would dare tell him how to do his job better and goes storming off. So, last day of training, each of us get called into the CEO's office. Surprise. They were never going to hire both of us. They simply couldn't decide. So they decided to secretly test us for a month, and then whoever they liked better at the end they'd hire. Because of the incident they were concerned I didn't work well with others, even though the new store manager job was now solitary, and so I got the shaft. I felt pretty crappy, not only for being lied to for a month, but also missing my chance because I was actually helping a co-worker do a better job for the company. As a guy who is super analytical about stuff like that, I empathize with the pain of that injustice. First day of work in Japan. I'm an American who interned there for 6 months, and I didn't know a single word of Japanese. The other intern and I were talking about South Park, which led to talking about the Chimpokemon episode. I decided to Wikipedia that episode since I didn't have anything to do yet, and the headline reads something like "You sick American, don't look at this," and upon further reading found it wasn't even aired in Japan because it's so controversial. We're talking about the episode, casually referencing the name Chimpokemon. I started to notice that other employees were looking at me in disgust, so I figured we were doing something wrong. I walked to the desk of a Japanese co-worker who was pretty cool with us already, to which he said that we were casually yelling "Little Dong Monster" in the middle of the office. First day of my first job. I go to orientation at a different building, get my ID badge and my parking decal, and I'm sent on my way. It's a little tiny decal, so I get in the parking garage and I'm not sure if I'm supposed to put it on my front window or on my rear window, so I start looking at other cars to see where they have it placed. Well, some had it in front, some in back, and many didn't have one at all, so I'm just staring at these cars, scratching my head. Eventually I go upstairs and walk by the main security desk and hear him talking into a walkie-talkie. "We've got reports of a guy in a green shirt casing vehicles on the 3rd floor. I look down. Yup, green shirt. So I turn myself in thinking I'll just explain the situation, only to get taken to the security office for about 20 minutes while they call my brand new boss and confirm that I was invited here and am not a car thief. Good first impression. Not mine, but a former housemate. He was always late for work anyway, and so, even on his first day, he left the house late. Not wanting to make a bad impression, he decided to jog to work. However, when he arrived and motioned to take his jacket off, he realized that, as he was wearing a light blue cotton shirt, there were 2 obvious damp patches under each armpit along with a massive damp splat of sweat on his back. I should also mention that he was not one of the most hygienic members of society either. Whilst being shown round his new place of work, he opted to keep his jacket on, but eventually realized that he was gonna have to do something and was forced to meekishly explain to his new boss that he was drenched in sweat and asked permission to pop to a nearby shop and buy a new shirt and some deodorant, which his boss thankfully allowed. Thus he was forever known as Sweaty Dave. First night as a waiter in training. I was staging some drink glasses and lost grip on one side of the carrier. Lost the whole tray full of 16-pint glasses. Not pretty. I got the mandatory customer's applause too. First day at my new Catholic high school as a grade 11 transfer student. I was the only one who didn't know that uniforms were excused on the first day of class. Wanna feel like a dork all day? Try wearing a kilt and sweater while everyone else is in jeans and tees. Had to poop bad before an interview but had no time. Figured I could unclog the drain after the interview. The interviewer asked me to start immediately, as in today, for this contract to hire programming it position. No problem. I really didn't want to poop in the bathroom because it is about 4 feet by 3 feet wide, with nowhere for the smell to go except out into the hallway. A few hours in and I'm doing the chair squirm. You know, the one where you constantly adjust your position to ease the pressure on the stomach. Suddenly I feel all heck breaking loose down there and I give in and head into the bathroom. I tell you, the very floor quaked when I flushed this monster down. I sprayed liberally with the air freshener and as I'm doing so I see an air vent right above the toilet, but don't think much of it. Half an hour later the woman in the room next to the bathroom is complaining about smelling something moldy, something she's never smelled before in the office. She starts calling other people into her office to see what they think it is, and they all agree it smells moldy. She opens the windows to let the smell out even though it's 40 degrees out and announces to everybody she will be leaving the windows open overnight to let the place air out. Apparently the vent dumped the air from the bathroom into her office. At the time I felt like they had to know it was me who did it, and I felt like they were making such a big deal about it to get me to confess. Here's another one. On my first day as an assistant manager at a supermarket, we were majorly short-staffed and I ended up having to collect carts at the end of the night. I pushed a shopping cart through a massive $5,000 window and the manager had to come and stay at the store overnight to make sure nobody came in through the window and robbed the place. They did not ask me back. When applying to colleges, one of the schools I applied to was Yale. I got an interview, and after having driven to the interview I locked my keys in my car. I had to borrow the interviewer's phone to call my dad, 60 minutes away, to come bring me a spare. I didn't get in. First day at a new job. I have to take the bus, which connect to a train, to get to work. It was the first day for the driver, too. When I got on the bus, I ask him, will this take me to Appleby station, and he has to check with the guy behind him. So, because it's his first day, and he's being watched, and he doesn't know the route, he's driving slower than he should be. We arrive at the train station, just in time to see the train pulling away. Also, I hadn't yet put my new work's phone number into my cell phone, so I had no way to contact them. I ended up being 45 minutes late on my first day. If this is the Appleby GO station in Ontario, then I can vouch for the fact that, even if your bus driver wasn't new, there's a 50/50 chance that you would have been late. Anyway, Burlington Transit, like Oakville Transit, is, to put it bluntly, balls. Not mine, but an awesome guide from South Africa. This guy was brand new as a waiter in a top-notch hotel in Joburg, and was surprised he got the job as he's generally an outdoorsy looking guy that can be a bit clumsy, but get the job he did, and it had the potential to earn tons of cash through tips as the food was very expensive. This elderly couple is his first table he gets there, and they immediately order a wine that costs over $1,000. He immediately becomes very nervous at the prospect of this and goes and gets the bottle. As he's talking about the wine, all bulls, I remember him saying, His hands were sweaty from holding the bottle. He accidentally pours too hard, and to keep it from overfilling he jerks the bottle away, and it flies out of his hands and smashes on the floor. Everyone stops and looks at him. He's embarrassed as heck. The couple were understanding enough, though, and asked for another bottle. He's super nervous now and goes back to ask for another bottle, and the wine seller guy is like, no way, you just dropped such an expensive bottle, but he's talked into providing our hero with another bottle. So he goes back, and trying to be very careful and deliberate he manages to pour one glass fine, and as he's pouring the second bottle it slips from his now very sweaty hands. In a last ditch effort to try and stop the bottle from hitting the floor, he lifts up his foot to try and save the bottle, overcompensates and basically drop kicks a $1,000+ bottle of wine across a super nice restaurant. It shatters against the wall, and everyone had still been watching him. He takes off his apron, apologizes to the elderly couple, and walked out. TLDR. South African guy drops a $1,000 bottle of wine, gets another, and drop kicks that one out of nervousness before just leaving his brand new job. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.